Hello everybody, here we are in Holy Week on Wednesday, and Arthur asked me if I would just put a few sentences together for this day as we think about our approach to Easter. You know, things from the disciples' point of view must have been going pretty well this week. There'd been the triumphal entry of Jesus riding on the donkey into Jerusalem on Sunday, and according to Luke, Jesus was in the temple every day and then going out to a hill to pray in the evening, and then when he came back to the temple the next morning, there were crowds of people eager to hear him. So everything was looking really quite rosy, and I don't suppose the disciples had really much of an idea. In fact, my reading of things is that they didn't have any idea of what was to come later this week. And to some extent that's the situation we find ourselves in right at this moment. There was some warning, I think, back in December, January time, but for most of us this pandemic has hit us a bit like a tsunami, really, and we didn't really seem to have much of an idea that it was coming, even when the reports were coming out of China that infection was spreading and they were having to take all sorts of measures and so on and so forth. It felt a bit like, I think, well, that's miles away, it's not ever going to affect us. But here we are in the midst of it. Mandy and I certainly are sitting at home, or being at home anyway, together and in isolation because we are in that age group now, which is deemed as, quote, elderly, unquote, because we're over 70. And that means that we're even slightly more restricted than we were earlier on. And in fact, our daughter Eleanor has just delivered a chunk of shopping to us that she did for us today. So what's about to happen as far as the disciples are concerned is just not really on their radar. And I wonder if it's worth taking a moment or two to try and put ourselves in the disciples' shoes and just to say, you know, we're here, things look great, lots of people are coming to hear this person, the Christ, Jesus, who we've been with now for 3 years or so, and we've seen him do miraculous things, we've heard him speak the wisdom of God, and yet we know, because of where we're sitting, what the end of this story is, or at least the next stage of this story is, but the disciples can have had no idea. So over the next couple of days, it's maybe worth just trying to put ourselves in their shoes, and then we might begin to appreciate something of the shock and dismay and desolation and desperation that they felt when the events of Good Friday happened. Because when they did, again, the disciples had no idea that Easter Sunday was going to follow. We know that because we can look back and see it. But I think the risk for us is that we sort of take it a bit for granted. So just try and think over the next couple of days exactly where the disciples were and what they would have been thinking and how it would have felt for them on Good Friday when it comes. Amen.